Let's see. Do you still see the slides?
I don't actually. Can you share them?
There they go. Okay.
Hey everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We'll just probably give like a couple of minutes for people to join in, and then we'll start off.
Okay.
Hope everyone is having a great week. Community call weeks are always interesting, I guess.
Yeah.
Or so we like to believe. All right, so we are at about 2-minute mark. I think we should get started.
Are you turning your camera on? I'm live now. Okay, there we go.
Yeah. All right. Hey everyone, welcome to the June edition of the community call. So as you guys know by this time, I think each month we are going on this call. We are meeting on this call, going through our publicly available roadmap, understanding the progress on some of the upcoming AKS features. We have also started covering feature showcases, some of the interesting announcements, events that are coming through the AKS team. So yeah, today is just one of those of our monthly calls here. We are definitely excited to have you attend this session today. And just a quick minute on housekeeping rather before we start off. So first thing, this call will be recorded. All of the recordings for this call will be available on our YouTube channel. If you don't know where that is, that's basically youtube.com/the AKS community. That's the channel handle. We would love for you to spread the word more with your friends, coworkers who are working with AKS. The more the merrier on this community that we have here. We have almost like a movement going, and that's great here. Definitely ask questions. We have a Q&A time that's going to be at the around the end of the call. But then today we have Casey talking to us about cost management during that section as well. If you have questions, we would love to hear from you. Casey would love to respond to your questions on cost management as well. Um, at the end of the call, we will be opening up the mics as well, so we can have the questions on voice as well as on the chat. Lastly, we do want to hear from you, right? So the QR code that you see, Phil, if you can just go back to the previous slide. The QR code that you see here is the one that will take you to a content feedback page. Which is where you can let us know what is the kind of content that you like to see, right? Like, are you more into videos? Are you more into docs or blogs? Or what areas within AKS specifically would you like us to cover? And we'll do our best to address that. So just a quick one. Yeah, if you can just move one more slide. Just a quick reminder. We do have we do emphasize on having a very inclusive session. So as we come off mute, as we type out our questions, comments, we'd love to have a really nice, friendly atmosphere here. We're all co-workers working together. So let's just be understanding of the differences and kind and considerate. Moving on to the next one, Well. So the agenda today, we would be talking a little bit about some of the new things that we are doing. A lot of you might have heard about the labs that we are covering on Reactor. The AKS labs are already there. We had covered them before. what we are doing now is we are taking those labs and doing live sessions where some of our PMs are walking you through those labs. If you have any questions on those, we are helping you in real time. And all of this is being hosted by our fantastic Microsoft Reactor infrastructure that we already have. Again, as we go through these labs, each of these labs are going to be available on the Reactor YouTube as well as the AKS YouTube channel. We also have a cost management series that has been kicked off. Casey is going to be here on this call today. She'll be talking about cost management, but that's also some cost management content that you can review offline. After that, we are going to go get into deprecated features, content spotlight, the feature deep dive on cost management, and then the roadmap highlights. Moving on to the next slide. So we just talked about the labs here. The next lab is going to be on June 24th. We are going to be covering event-driven auto scaling using KDA. And the link here is akms/aks/live labs. You can simply go onto that link, register for that lab. If you have a cell phone handy, we also have a QR code that you can just scan and register yourself there. Same thing on the moving on to the cost management series. This is the series that's available on our YouTube channel. Again, we have a AKMS link there, ak.ms/aks/cost-mgmt management-videos. Again, you can see a QR code. If you're flipping out your phones, scan the code, it'll take you to the playlist, right? You can watch all the videos, but just do that after the community call. All right, so moving to the next slide. Phil, do you want to take over?
Yeah. Let me get this started. So, welcome everyone. It is we're halfway through the year, so thanks for those people that started with us in January, and thanks for all the new people that have joined. We will kick off the deprecation. We got just one major one. Hopefully, it's not affecting too many people. We are retiring Ubuntu 18.04, which I think was actually released like April of 2018. So hopefully, this is a big impact for those. But if you do happen to be running this, do understand that we are not producing any more builds for this. So definitely, if you're utilizing this in your node pools, this will disrupt you as no new builds, and all of these images will actually be removed off of our registry. So again, if you're tied to this, this will be super disruptive. You can upgrade and move to newer nodes, and so there is an easy button for that. So just please be aware of these. I would consider this a breaking change happening here tomorrow, actually on the 19th. All right, with that, I'm excited. We have Casey. She is one of the PMs here on the AKS team, and her specialty, or one of her specialties, is around cost management. So I know this is a big topic for everybody. You got to control costs, et cetera. And so we have Casey here. She's going to take us through all the fun stuff that you can do to kind of create like a cost management strategy in your usage of AKS. So with that, Casey, I will hand it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Phil. And hi, my name is Casey Yu, if we haven't met, and I work on everything cost management, cost optimization related. So super excited to be chatting on this topic with you today. Let's jump to the agenda. We'll be covering a few different sections. So first, how to understand and monitor your AKS costs. We'll do a demo of a few of the newly announced features at Build, such as advisors, a Grafana dashboard, and then we'll also cover AKS cost analysis, which has been in GA for some time, but is a great tool for understanding and monitoring your costs. And then we'll end with some scaling strategies. So once you identify some of where the idle cost is coming from or optimization opportunities, we can see how scaling can be leveraged as an effective strategy. So let's jump right into the first section. And first want to break down what actually makes up AKS costs. So we like to think of it in 3 buckets. The first being your AKS control plane cost, which includes the pricing tier, which you may commonly think of as AKS Standard, AKS Premium, or the free tier of your AKS cluster. There are 3 options. So free tier obviously is free. This is meant for small scale dev test clusters, clusters with less than 10 nodes, really scenarios where you want to be experimenting and testing. And in the free tier example, you won't be paying for control plane costs, but you will be paying for infrastructure costs like compute network storage that's consumed by your applications, as well as any attached services. So if you're using things like Defender, Monitor, Azure Machine Learning, those would be still considered part of your all-up AKS costs. For the standard tier, this now includes the uptime SLA, which is a financially backed uptime in production standard clusters. In the standard tier, it supports up to 5,000 nodes in a cluster. There's higher availability, reliability guarantees, and this is really for those enterprise grade production workloads. And here you would be paying for 10 cent per cluster per hour fee, as well as your core infrastructure and attached services costs. And then the last option within the control plane pricing tiers is the premium tier. And this includes things like long-term support. If you want that additional premium and guaranteed support for your Kubernetes versioning, then this would be a 60 cent per cluster per hour fee. Now, the second bucket is what we call core infrastructure. So this includes compute resources like your VM SKUs, your VMSS, networking, which includes load balancer resources, IP, bandwidth, and then storage, which would include any disk, persistent volumes. And these are all required for basic and underlying functions for your cluster and get spun up when your cluster is first created. And then finally, the attached services, these come in AKS add-ons or extensions and may have their own fee as well if you're using it alongside AKS. So when we think of AKS costs, it's not just compute, it's not just the control plane, it's this broader picture of other ecosystem tooling as well. So that's just something to take note of. Now, if you're on AKS and you have your applications running already, you're looking to kind of get started in the cost optimization journey, but not quite sure where to start, the AKS cost recommendations is a really great option to get some basic recommendations for your cluster specifically. This was announced as GA at Build just last month. All of these recommendations are available in the Azure Advisor experience in Azure Portal, and they're aligned to our AKS cost best practices and are specific to your cluster configuration. So not every cluster might get all 4 recommendations. They can get 1 or 2, or even all 4 if they apply to your cluster. So in our initial 4 scenarios that are targeted are workload right sizing with VPA, cost allocation with AKS cost analysis, auto scaling specifically with cluster autoscaler, and recommendations around tuning the autoscaler profile to scale in more rapidly. So you're not paying for nodes that are sitting there empty, as well as SKU selection around spot nodes. So if there are workloads that can handle interruptions, spot could be a great option. Spot will be discounted compute um, that you can use available Azure capacity at a discounted price. Now, why do we need to monitor and why is this important? Well, firstly, if we want to understand our spending behavior, understand which applications and developer teams are generating X amount of costs, then we need a visibility tool to effectively monitor and get control of our costs. It also helps with ensuring teams are operating within budget. You can set caps and alerts. So if a team surpasses that budget, then financial platform developer teams are all notified. Allows you to look at historical trends, so not just in the short term, but how trends are changing over a longer term period as applications continue to scale and grow, or new applications are added. And with this analysis, you can identify anomalies. So is there seasonality? Are there unexpected spikes in your costs that are coming from, spiky workloads or unexpected scale of a workload? And this ultimately all is about driving accountability of spend. So ensuring that your developer teams are aware of the spend they're incurring and then can go on and have the tools to then optimize and take control of that spend. A tool that we have to help with this monitoring and visibility is the AKS cost analysis add-on. This has been in GA for quite some time now, and it is an Azure native cost allocation experience where you can see your cluster infrastructure costs broken down by namespaces view as well as by Azure assets, so the compute network and storage categories, and we'll do a demo of this as well. And this is really the tool to help you look at historical spend over the last 13 months. You get a picture of within your cluster, where is the idle cost coming from? You can look at those shared namespaces and shared costs and decide how to allocate those back to the developer teams as well. And it's a good starting point to understand what needs optimization. So we can jump into the demo now, and I'm just going to pull up my Azure portal and we can have a look. So here I am in the Azure portal, and I'll start from the landing page. So to look at the advisor experience first, there are multiple entry points. You can either go through the advisor service itself, you can go through a cluster or a subscription. All have entry points to the advisor experience and Kubernetes recommendations. I'll start in the advisor service since this gives a overview of all of the other categories. So there's not just cost, but there's also security, reliability, performance, operational excellence categories. And you can see how your resources are tracking against the recommendations too with this score, which is quite interesting. Cost, we're at a 0. This is not a great sign. So I want to see what are the recommendations that are being surfaced. Interesting ones here. So at the subscription level, this is not AKS specific, but is a great one to leverage alongside AKS is reserved instances, as well as consider purchasing savings plan for compute. RIs and savings plans give compute at a discounted price. Quite a good discount. But it does require an upfront commitment of a 1 to 3 year term. So with RIs, you specify which region, which SKU type you want to use. You make that 1 to 3 year commitment, and then your compute price is discounted. I think it was up to 70% of a compute savings. RIs are more restrictive, so you have to know upfront what SKU type you want to have the RI applied to. Savings plans are more flexible, so it's not specific to a SKU or a region, but you instead commit to an upfront spend amount. So, X dollars per hour per day, and then you also will get that compute discount. A little bit less than RIs, but still a great savings opportunity. Now for the AKS specific recommendations, I can see uh, I have one cluster that is impacted and there are 3 recommendations. First is the spot node. Second is VPA, so I can actually leverage VPA recommendation mode if I don't want it to be automatically right sizing and changing my pod request and limit values. I can still use it to get recommendations, and then I can take those recommendations, tweak it, and go and change it myself. So that is a great option too if automation is something that you're not quite ready for. And then finally, we have the cluster autoscaler profile for rapid scale down and cost savings. The profile, cluster autoscaler profile is quite great. You can tweak the different settings to indicate how you want the autoscaler to do its scaling actions. I can, for example, decrease the wait time after a node is considered empty or unutilized so that it scale downs faster and I'm not having to pay for a node sitting there that's empty. So that is a great strategy too. But with any of these recommendations, you can click in and see the details of it. You can get the link to documentation, see which cluster and subscriptions are impacted. You can postpone or dismiss this recommendation if it's not applicable to your subscription and cluster scenario. So this is, again, just a great starting point to see what optimizations are available for your cluster. Now, the second piece of this demo is going to be cost analysis. So I've already enabled it on a few clusters in my subscriptions, in my tenant, across different regions. So the entry point will be the subscription view or a cluster view, but I want to start at the subscription scope so that I can see all of my clusters in this subscription. I will go to cost analysis, and then there's this drop down. You can toggle to Kubernetes clusters view. And here I will see that for all of my clusters across different resource groups, across different regions in this subscription, in my demo subscription, I can see a high level immediate overview of the cluster costs. One interesting thing was early in May, I had tested 2 clusters that were leveraging cluster autoscaler and had, a basic storefront demo application running. And then later on in the month, as we got toward build, I was testing a few AKS clusters with node auto provision. So 2 different types of infrastructure scaling options, but it was interesting to see a lot of it, the costs were driven by compute, and there's a clear visual representation of my node auto provision cluster costs being a lot cheaper because of reduced compute costs. But that's just just a quick call out. But from this view, you can actually drill into a cluster. We kind of call this a bill of resources. So you get a complete list of all of the resources that were running in your cluster over this period of time. You can see how much of the cost, the resource costs, so this is a VMSS resource, how much of it was due to idle, how much was actually used by applications, how much was reserved to run system-related processes. And then if you click on the cluster, you can actually drill deeper into a namespaces view. And here I could see my 2 application namespaces. I could see their associated compute network and storage costs. And then we have all of these other costs, which we consider shared costs. So these are not directly attributed to one namespace per se or one team if this cluster is being shared across multiple teams. So they're reported as an individual kind of cost record in this view so that your team can decide, do I split it proportionally across application teams based on their individual costs? Do I do a even kind of peanut butter spread splitting across developer teams and applications? So there is some flexibility for how you can individually allocate these shared costs. But for the shared costs, we call out idle, kube system, the uptime SLA. And here we can see that there's actually a huge amount of compute cost that is idle. This could be because my applications are relatively small. They're not being bin packed properly on my nodes. Maybe I have too many nodes in this cluster and actually need to scale down. So this is a immediate indicator that there is opportunity on compute side to go and reduce that cost and optimize what is being provisioned. And then one more view to show here is what we call the Kubernetes assets view. So I'll go back to my cluster overview, and instead of clicking on namespaces, I can click on Kubernetes assets. And now this is a categorical grouping of all of our resources in our cluster. So here again, we can see compute is by far the highest proportion of costs in this cluster. I can drill down into my compute category and see all of my different node pool related meters and costs. Looks like my agent pool cost was pretty high idle, but also my user pool cost was pretty high idle relative to the amount that was actually used by applications. And then again, we can also see the system cost. And it's the same kind of representation for my networking, my storage costs as well. I have my load balancer, public IP costs. If you're using a private cluster, you would similarly have all of your meters and resources for those private clusters. And then for service, here is just the standard uptime SLA fee, that 10 cent per hour per cluster fee. And the final piece that I want to show is going to be Azure Monitor Grafana inbuilt dashboards. So this was another capability announced at Builds, which is in preview. So I'm in my cluster overview, and now within the monitoring section, there's a dashboards with Grafana experience. This is actually available out of box. It does require Managed Prometheus to be enabled. As long as you have Managed Prometheus running, then there are all of these dashboards that are available for free for you to use, integrated with that Prometheus data. It's a really great way to, again, look at your cost data alongside your actual utilization data for your cluster, and see, what was your utilization percentages, what were your request and limit values, how much of your usage relative to your requested amount, and different ways of slicing and dicing all of this rich data. So that will complete the demo, and then I'm going to switch back over to the deck really quickly.
Casey, do you want to take a question while you switch over?
Yes.
So we have a question in the chat around having a requirement to build a custom dashboard to consolidate multiple resources across subscriptions. And they're wondering if there's a way to export or access the cost management data using an API. And I think they mentioned that they're evaluating KubeCost to do this, but there is some mismatch between the cost on Azure and KubeCost.
So at the moment, unfortunately, there is not a API available from cost management. You can manually download the data that's available in Azure portal to then go and slice and dice and pull from multiple clouds and subscriptions and do that custom dashboard. We do want to support the scheduled exports as well as API capability. Unfortunately, don't have a ETA that we can share on that quite yet. But to the second piece on why the costs don't match, so KubeCost and our AKS cost add-on, they both do build on top of OpenCost under the hood for the usage metrics, but our reconciliation process is a little bit different. So from OpenCost and KubeCost, they actually don't query for a few of the resources in the AKS cluster, like OS disk, public IP. So in our native add-on, we will do additional queries to ARM and grab that data. So a little bit, mainly because of a slightly different reconciliation process, and then the additional resources that we're querying for, which would cause that cost mismatch.
Okay, so we got a couple of other questions. Do you want to get through the rest of your slides, Casey? Or are you able to answer any more right now?
I'll take a look through the chat. If there are any any that are being highly flagged, happy to touch on those first. Just have
Yeah,
a look through
we
the
have a
chats.
couple. This won't go in order. Let's just try to see. I think is it, hopefully I'm pronouncing this right. Yelenius. He has an interesting one. He's asking, is there any ways to connect cost to namespaces?
Yeah, so the cost to namespaces, that would best be through the cost analysis add-on. The cost analysis views that we had shown, that namespace view. You'll see the application, and depending on how your teams are naming their namespaces, any application namespace within your cluster would be captured in those views.
Yeah, let's see. We got an early question from Richard. He says, well, I guess the question is, are you aware of the Kubernetes resource recommendation project out there? He's saying that he would like to see if he can utilize that instead of VPA. That makes sense.
Interesting. Was that a question around integrating that into the recommendation experience, or?
Yeah, I believe that's where Richard's going. And
yeah, I think let me just allow Mike, and then Richard can chime in.
Yeah.
Richard, you should be able to unmute and ask.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, the VPA workload recommendation is all well and good, but having to put a VPA on a cluster when you don't really need it is a bit of a not so good when there's tools out there like KRR, which is by a company called Robusta, which just utilizes the Prometheus data. So if we had Prometheus already on the cluster, why can't we use that data? Why do we need the VPA?
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I'm not too familiar with the tool, but definitely interested to take a look there. And if it's leveraging existing data from Prometheus, that could be a great option as well. Were there any other questions? If not, happy to go through the rest of the slides and then can come back and
Yeah, I think there is just one more, again from Richard here. The cost analysis requires storage account for it to be deployed. Will the data stored there be available so that it can later be downloaded?
cost analysis, the portal UI views require storage?
Yeah, so I'm still unmuted. That's good. So to use the AKS cost analysis add-on, you need to have it's Azure Disk CSI driver enabled. So I'm guessing it's using some Azure storage behind the scenes. Can we query that to get the data rather than having to export it from the portal view?
At the moment, that is not available to query the underlying data. That would be an interesting avenue that we can explore as a workaround, since I know it's a challenge to being able to pull the data from portal has been a limitation at this time. So yeah, I'm happy to take that back and see what we can explore with the team to make something available like that.
Thank you.
All right, I will go through the rest of the slides and then happy to come back to more of the questions. So from a scaling perspective, if we see that we have high idle, we want to take steps towards optimizing, scaling could be a great option. So within AKS, all of our scalers are what we call managed add-ons. They are actually built on top of open source CNCF projects, but a managed add-on means that we're managing the upgrades, the versioning, the patches. And this is true not just for our scalers on AKS, but a lot of the AKS add-ons are built on top of open source. So for scaling, there are two dimensions. There's horizontal and vertical scaling for application level scalars. HPA will increase and decrease the pod replica counts based on demand and based on metrics such as CPU and memory utilization. VPA will scale the size of the pod, not the number of pod, but actually the size of the pod based on the request and limit values, based on historical utilization patterns for both CPU and memory. And then CADA will, Kubernetes event-driven autoscaler, will extend HPA to scale the number of pods, but instead of just on CPU and memory utilization metrics, it can scale based on a whole bunch of event triggers. There are over 70 plus scalers that are supported, things from Azure Monitor Prometheus metrics or number of events in Event Hub, number of queue, length of a service bus queue, a lot of different triggers that can be supported and scaled on here. And then from an infrastructure perspective, there's cluster autoscaler and node auto provision. So cluster autoscaler will change the number of nodes in a node pool, while node auto provision will pick the most effective, cost-effective SKU for your workload based on pending pod requirements. And one thing to call out is cluster autoscaler and NAP can't be used at the same time on a cluster. So you'll have to decide which one is better for your scenario. And this visual representation, there are 2 points I want to hit on among the differences between cluster autoscaler and node auto provision. So the first one is that cluster autoscaler works on pre-created node pools, scaling them up and down. So if you have different SKUs that you want to mix within your cluster, you'll have to create a dedicated node pool for each SKU type. And similarly, if you want to mix up on demand and spot within your cluster, then you'll have to have a node pool that's only on demand, a node pool that's only spot. And you do need to know upfront what is the best SKU for your workload before creating these node pools. So it might be a memory optimized SKU, or maybe it's a compute optimized SKU, but there is some upfront decision making that has to happen. NAP, on the other hand, it will provision the right SKU for your workload on the fly and kind of as needed rather than relying on the pre-created node pool concept. So you don't need to know your preferred SKU upfront. If you have a workload that is using like a DSV2, for example, and you bring on a new workload into your cluster that maybe has a better cost optimized SKU for that, NAP can actually identify and provision from all of the Azure supported, all the AKS supported SKU types. So maybe it's a Cobalt, maybe it's a GPU SKU, maybe it's one supported by Azure Boost. NAP will remove that decision-making process for you, and you don't have to keep track of every single new SKU that's coming out and being supported on AKS and Azure, because that can get quite complicated. And then the second primary difference is how they do consolidation. So cluster autoscaler will scale down the node pool when a node becomes unutilized, while NAP will consolidate workloads across existing nodes, even into a new node that's potentially a different SKU type than the original nodes. And both are also compatible with reserved instances. So if you already have an RI in place, you can leverage a dedicated node pool and cluster autoscaler model that aligns with your RI SKU. With NAP, how it works is you would specify in your node pool definition what SKU or what family that aligns with your reserved instance. So there is ways to target your RI and leverage those with both scalars. And the last piece is cost optimized add-on scaling. This was also shared during build. So this goes one step further. For now AKS managed add-ons, you can also scale these add-ons to take as little space on your infrastructure and cluster. We've started with Core DNS and Retina, image integrity, and workload identity. Those managed add-ons can leverage the scaling, and we will continue to roll out and support other add-ons with time. basically what happens is you can override the AKS defaulted resource request and limit values, leveraging the scaling, and then right size. So you essentially will have more space on your infrastructure to run your workloads and any of your applications instead of system reserved. And lastly, to learn more, a few of our other resources you may already be aware of. Within our documentation, we do have a set of cost management, cost optimization specific docs, as well as the new cost management series on our community YouTube channel, which Sanket had called out earlier. We have, I believe, 4 or 5 episodes out now. Some are touching on the topics that we have covered today, and then we'll be continuing to roll out more episodes on interesting topics like GPU plus cost, deep diving into how to tweak and optimize your Azure Monitor costs for AKS. So a lot more planned, and stay tuned to learn more. And if there are other topics you'd like to see, we'd be more than happy to cover them there.
Awesome. Excellent. Thank you, Casey. I do have a question for you. I mean, obviously, we can't make any guarantees, and most environments are kind of, it's not a one size fits all concerning everyone's environment. I guess from your perspective, like, is there certain configurations that you think give you the biggest bang for your buck in controlling costs?
Yeah, I think it's hard to say since every application and cluster may be different, but the kind of steps that we generally recommend is first and foremost, you need to understand your costs. Where are they coming from? What applications are generating the most costs? Then you can leverage, these add-ons and tools that AKS are providing around scaling or multi-tenancy strategies to maybe share the resources more across your workloads. And then the last piece is layering on like the Azure discounts and RI savings plans to really capitalize on the compute savings opportunities. But it's yeah, not a one size fits all. It's
Right.
not a one and done process. So it is important to continuously evaluate, and when you have these, monitoring set up, when you have automation set up, it makes that much easier process to come back and tweak and change as your footprint grows and as more or less applications are running there.
Right. Let's see. We may have some other questions. I'm going to run through here.
Just as we go
Yeah.
through the questions, I think there was just going through the chat. I thought this might need it would be good to have this clarification, right? So the cost management add-on is going to provide you recommendations. It's not going to configure the scaling for you. I mean, to actually do the scaling, we would need to still rely on other scaling technology features like the HPA, VPA, or cluster autoscaler, or the node auto provision, right? And Casey, feel free to add to this, but I just thought it's good to have that distinction. We are looking at advising or recommendations on cost management, whereas the actual scaling is still a separate thing altogether.
That's right. Yes, the recommendations and cluster cost analysis experience for cost allocation and visibility are I guess non-invasive. So we're not going to implement the scalers for you. We're not going to change your cluster configuration. We're just providing those recommendations and visibility for you to make the decision on how you want to tweak and optimize and which scalers you want to use. And then to leverage the application and infrastructure scalers, there will be some actions on your end to enable, to fine tune, but that will not be part of the scope of what the recommendations provide.
All right. You hanging with us, Casey, for the call?
Yeah,
Yes, happy to.
Okay.
And I'll continue to
Sorry, there are a few questions. If you want to take those.
Yeah, I'm happy to continue responding in the chat for
Okay.
any of the remaining questions.
Right. If there's any that we want to broadcast, we can take those. If not, we'll move to the next section of this. And then again, Casey's with us for the whole call. So again, if you have questions, continue to put those in the chat. Casey will answer those. All right, so let's move on. And we're at our favorite segment, I guess. Again, we're going to go through the project board. We're just highlighting, again, some of the ones that I think are most impactful and that we got a lot of movement around. But again, just simple disclaimers. These are all estimates and things can change. So I think everyone understands that. All right. So we actually had a lot of items that actually GA'd this month. There's probably close to 20 features and those scenarios that GA'd. I won't go through all of them. So I would encourage everyone to go to the board and take a look at the GA column because this is probably one of the biggest batches that we've seen so far. The ones I will highlight here are ones that we've been kind of tracking through other parts as far as like coming for preview, et cetera. First up is the API VNet integration. So that is now GA. And so I know we had did a whole segment about that with Chase. And so that is now ready to go in your environments and provide any feedback on that. Next, we have the AKS private egress. Again, this is going to allow you to have a completely isolated cluster that can't even get to some of the endpoints on Azure. And so, got the poll jumped up in my face there. Next, support admission control mutations as to comply with Azure policy. So this is now going to, if you have your policies, if something is of drift, the policy now has the authority to go ahead and make those mutations and bring everything back into policy. So I know that was asked, and this will help kind of automate that for you. We also do have the cordon blocked nodes and proceed with upgrade. Again, this is dealing with certain capacity in your subscription. If you do get one of your nodes that is blocked, we won't stop the upgrade for you. We'll continue on, cordon those off, and then you can later upgrade those as part of the cluster. So this will be a non-blocking activity during upgrades for you. Next, the Microsoft Copilot. So again, it's using some of that AI right next to you as you navigate the portal. And so I've used it. It's pretty cool. Hey, how do you do this command? How do you do that command? It'll kind of give you a bunch of feedback, how to search for this, or what's my largest cluster name. All the prompts will be available for you. So looking for feedback. If you are using this and you find it helpful, or you think, or maybe you have an edge case that it's really not working for you, we like to know. But that is GA, and you should see that in the portal. And the last couple here, again, we might have touched on this last month, but every version Kubernetes version starting from 1.27, they are all enabled for LTS. So you can run those for an extended period of time in your subscription. And then finally, the Azure portal deployment recommendations. This is kind of, again, infusing all the best practices and guidance for you for your cluster. And again, this is just a small stack here, but please, again, I would encourage everyone to go visit the project board, and there's probably, again, another 15 or so that I haven't covered, but that'll take up a ton of time here. Next, we will go into public preview. what we have is the deployment safeguards. Again, this is what's going to be able to give you best practices around operating your cluster and provide feedback. So this is in public preview, and see those recommendations show up in the portal. We are close, so NAP is coming. I know this has been a really popular one from the day that we've announced it. We are pretty close on this. In fact, this will probably GA at the end of this month. And so that's probably in the next couple of weeks. So that will be GA, and you can start utilizing that for your production workloads, as well as Cato. So that's the AI toolchain operator. That is actually on pace to go public. GA at the end of this month. Next, we have the virtual machine nodes. Again, this allows you to have the node pool with multiple different types of VMs. This is also moving pretty fast. We look to have this GA by the end of this month. And so again, those top four there are going to be moving pretty fast. And so by next call, those will be in our GA column for the board. Next, the Windows Exporter. So this is going to enable you to get metrics from all your Windows nodes into Prometheus. We are on pace for this to go GA in the next couple of months, 2 to 3. We're actively doing some things to allow this integration with Windows, and so we are on track for the maybe 2 to 3 months. 3 months at the most, hopefully. Next to that, we do have the Windows Server annual channel for AKS. If you're familiar with the way that Windows does its channels, you have kind of like the basic one. You also have one that's specific to containers. Obviously, if you're using AKS and you have Windows nodes, you want to use the container channel because, again, it's giving you enhancements that are going to be relevant to hosting containers. This is roughly about 2 to 3 months, probably the same bucket as the Windows Exporter. So we're looking at about 2 to 3 months before we see that into GA. I'll just mention the last couple here, the restrict the IMDS traffic for the endpoints. This is really close. We are actually trying to figure out how we will talk about support, and because the only thing that's really holding this back is the add-on support. So if you think about workload ID, it actually needs some of this connectivity to happen for that to work. So we may end up GAing this and providing some documentation on which add-ons either aren't going to work or give you some recommendations and guidance on how to make those work. But this is really close. So stay tuned for that one. And then last, we got the static egress gateway. And that, again, it's as the title is, it's a static egress gateway. And we are looking at about 2 to 3 months before we see that roll into to GA usage. Right. And I think that's all we have for the preview. We'll go to the last one here. And again, this is kind of in progress. And I like to mention again, so when I talk about dates for things in progress, that means it's moving from the in progress column to the preview column, not to GA. We'll start off with the scheduler configuration support for AKS. This is going to allow you to have different scheduling type of options for you. This is close to moving to preview. This is actually in our launch review right now. Don't have specifics, but we could safely say maybe the next month or two we'll see this in preview. The next we have the support node local DNS cache. This will allow your workloads in your cluster to actually do lookups locally on the node that they're on before they or need to go to the actual kube DNS. We're actually looking for some testers. So if you have a scenario where you think this can be helpful for you, this is what we're calling kind of in cluster using customer private preview. we can enable this on your subscription if you have some scenarios or some edge cases that we need to be aware of. So please contact us if you want to be enabled, and we can go through it and see what we can do for you. Next, we have the AKS managed RBAC should cover AKS managed CRDs. Yeah, this is about a month or two away from being in preview. What this means is if you have RBAC, certain CRDs on the cluster aren't really tied to some of the RBAC rules. This will resolve a lot of that. So yeah, look for this to be available to test out in the next couple of months. Let's see, we have the Cilium transparent encryption. This is very similar to like how a service mesh works, but this is obviously node traffic. We are on pace for this to be in preview in the next couple of months. And then we also have the support for Windows Server 2025. This is a little further away. There's a lot of things that need to happen for this, but this is probably more in the end of year range, 4 months plus possibly before we see that in preview for you to be able to utilize. And then finally, we have the node pool upgrade rollback. Again, this will, if you don't have a blue-green scenario set up as you do your upgrade, this will actually keep your node pool intact for you to be able to roll back to it and hopefully not be so disruptive in your environment. This is probably the same time frame. We're probably about 3 to 4 months out before we see this in preview for you to be able to test with it in your environment. And that's it. Again, we're just highlighting some of these work items for you. There's a lot more that I didn't cover, but for the sake of time, we just want to kind of highlight. But again, I ask you to go to the roadmap project board, and you can see a full list of those. Okay, so we have made it. We are really close to the end. We got maybe a couple of minutes. But if anyone has any questions, I think Sanket, you'll open the mics, and then we can try to field some of those questions for you, for those who stuck around.
Yeah, the mic should already be open, so feel free to come off mute and ask questions as you have them.
And I know there's a couple of polls in the chat too. So if you got a couple of cycles, go ahead and just click and submit on those polls. Okay, I don't see any hands raised. I think I saw a lot of activity there in the chat. So hopefully, oh, we do got one. Richard, go ahead.
Yeah, so are you guys going to be doing anything at KubeCon Atlanta this year? Or have you not even thought about it yet? Because it's not until November.
Yeah, we got a lot of runway. I know we're going to be involved. I will hand this over to Corey. I think she might be best to chat about what we're doing.
Yeah, we candidly, I got to get through India first, which is coming up in August, but we will be at KubeCon Atlanta as a diamond sponsor again. So we'll have our Azure Day with Kubernetes pre-day event happening, as well as lots of stuff going on around the booth and show floor. So we will provide more information on that as we get closer to the planning cycle.
Yeah, and I'm super excited. I live in Atlanta, so hopefully I can meet people that come in, and I know where all the great barbecue joints are as well. So definitely looking forward to KubeCon in Atlanta.
Phil just nominated himself as chief foodie for everyone who's attending from out of town.
All right, we are at time. Thank you all for showing up. Thank you, Casey, for going over the cost management. We will go ahead and have this available for viewing on YouTube in about a week or so. And then also, if you are in the other side of the world, APAC, just know that this call is happening 1 week from today with Simon leading that. and you can tune in to that if those time zones work for you. And again, all of this will be on our YouTube channel in about a week or so for viewing. Thank you all, and hope everyone has a good rest of their day, and we will see you next month. Have a good one.